Darkest Woods Are Still Ahead by Jay Wilburn. The wheels of the closed carriage tore through the rich dirt of the forest trail. Spikes and blades pointed out from the metal rims of the oaken wheels and spun in a blur like the deadly hubs of heathen chariots. High above, on the rocker bench perched on the front of the ebony conveyance, two rotten bodies showing more bone than clinging flesh held the reins of the horses. One undead driver steered the panicked animals through the winding bends of this cursed trail. Unnatural purple light spilled off their sleek hides as they pulled the wagon at high speed. The other undead driver snapped an impossibly long whip at the horses and at the creatures attacking from all sides out of the trees. Inside the carriage, the trunks, baggage, and clothes spilled everywhere as the vehicle tilted up on one set of wheels through the next turn before crashing down on the straightaways. In the midst of all the clutter inside, Scallon questioned all of his life choices that led him to bouncing off the thin walls of the carriage cabin that night. Instead of guarding his head from the impacts that likely cost him degrees of intelligence and days off his life, he clutched a small box to his chest to protect it and its ancient contents. As his brain jostled inside his skull, the conscious thing inside the tiny box cried out into Scallion's mind for release. Something with claws and mangy skin as pale as the hidden moon above the canopy of trees latched onto the side of the carriage and showed its belly through the barred windows. The wooden panels groaned as the claws scraped for purchase, and the creature tried to climb on top. One of the manic corpse drivers attacked with its whip. Scallon saw a lash of pink wound open across the monster's bony side, and it fell away from the carriage. As they raced onward, Scallon hoped that one creature at least had given up, or was too far behind to catch up. The young man hoped, but he doubted. Inside his head, the thing kept screaming. Scallon cried out loud at it. "Be still, you incorporeal thing. I can't even think." "What good is your thinking, boy?" the words echoed through his aching skull, "if all you do is roll around waiting to die." Scallon did not answer, but he closed his eyes, hugging the box against his body. The runes over its carved surface burned against his flesh, through his clothing in a most unpleasant way. Maybe he was waiting to die. Something with wings rustled against the outside of the hurtling carriage. After landing, its wings seemed to brush the trees on both sides. The whip cracked a few times. The monster perched above pecked through the ceiling, raining splinters and sawdust into Scallon's face and in his hair. "Set me free, you coward," the voice of the thing in the box demanded within Scallon's mind. The whip snapped and something tore above with a meaty, wet, rending sound that seemed to go on too long. The wings scraped against the outside of the speeding carriage in a way that sounded more like scales than feathers. The entire cabin settled down hard against the axles as the monster above launched itself into the air with a deep whoop from its wings. As it banked between the trees, Scallon only saw it for 2 or 3 seconds tops. It looked to be covered in shaggy red fur, even over its wings. Until that moment, he would have guessed it was a small dragon. If this hairy abomination had a head, he didn't see it. How had it pecked through the ceiling? If it had a name, he did not know it, even after his years as an apprentice to the Purple Mage. He did identify one of the undead drivers in the creature's talons. If the last driver were taken next, the carriage would roll to a stop. Scallon would wait to be eaten by the monsters, along with the enchanted horses, in this endless dark forest at the predator's leisure. With a small kernel of dark humor in the back of his mind, he realized the Purple Mage would be saddened by the loss of the artifact in the box, but would suffer hardly a second thought for his apprentice Scallon. "Your thoughts sicken me in their weakness," the thing from the box scolded. Scallon actually laughed as more claws dug into the outside of the carriage, with no spare driver to whip them away. He said out loud, "I'm sorry I disappoint a being such as yourself, but no one else succeeded in freeing you from that tomb, did they?" The thing laughed back, and it felt like cold claws inside Scallon's head. The entity growled within the young man's mind. The greatness to take a thing is only celebrated if you also possess the power to hold on to it. Scallon said, "Perhaps your next benefactor will be better than me. I can save us both if you open the box." Scowlin paused with that. The carriage bounded over roots and ruts in the trail as the wooden sides bent inward and the weight of whatever was climbing outside. How many demons promise such things to foolish boys desperate enough to believe them? I'm no mere demon, you child. I am the Eye of Malevolor. I am a god. Scowlin tried to remind himself that his mind was an open passage to this thing. Gods bring damnation, too. I care not for your worship or even your obedience, and I would not waste my time or energy in porting you to hell. But you are out of options, and that is when mortals must turn to gods for salvation. Now or never, decide if your life matters to you. Scowlin did not so much make a decision as he simply allowed his muscles to move with their fear. He opened the box. Light, a deeper purple than any magic his master had ever used, radiated out of the open lid and washed over Scowlin like a drowning wave. Even the creatures outside the carriage seemed to scream in fear. He dropped the box and held up his numb hands, surprised to discover he still possessed all his fingers. An object, the object, with edges too blurry to focus on, climbed up his leg like a giant spider. Scowlin dared to try to swat the thing away, but his fingers he still couldn't feel either passed through it or around it like it wasn't there. Scowlin wondered if the object really even occupied the dimension he had always taken for reality. Something caught in one of the wheels outside. The carriage bounced so hard it was a wonder it didn't beat its wooden hull apart. The thing in the spokes and spikes cried out before it tumbled away. Plenty more crawled around the outside, compromising the structure. The Eye of Malevolor continued up Scowlin's body. Now he felt it under and through his skin. It ran up through his ribs with force, and he felt and heard bones crack. More of a tick than a spider, Scowlin decided in his agony. He screamed with the pain of it and realized he would not survive this choice. Relax, the thing said. You will host me for now, but I will leave you alive and well. Living in your body is no goal of mine. You aren't that important. Now let me save us, and I am no tick, you worm. It climbed up and inside Scowlin's back. His shirt ripped open along his bulging spine. His left arm reached behind him without the support of his will. He tore away his cloak and realized he could see through his own eyes, but also saw strangely clear behind his back with the purple hue over the world. The double images threatened to drive him mad, but things were out of his control now. Through the purple eye of Malevolor, he saw the arachnid shapes climbing over the outside as if the wood of the carriage were semi-transparent. He spied the shapes of hideous creatures deeper in the woods, wishing he could block them out instead. His shoulders and elbows broke, turning his arms around backward. His head turned completely around on his neck, like an owl. You'll be set right soon, do not panic. Scowlin panicked, but was powerless over his own mutating body. Malevolor, using Scowlin's twisted form, kicked open the door to the carriage. The hardware for the latches fell away on the trail behind them. He climbed up the outside of the racing conveyance like a spider himself. On top, the creatures turned on him. They lashed out with their sharp scorpion-like stingers. He could see the venom boiling inside their bodies and climbing through ducts inside the segmented tails. His hands, on backwards, grabbed the stingers and hurled the creatures away. As one sprung for his face, his jaw on his backward head unhinged, and he bit through the body of the thing. It squirmed against his tongue and gums as black sludge oozed out of it like a burst berry. Scowlin, trapped inside his own mind, a prisoner inside his deformed body, wished he was dead as he tasted the oily, raw flavor of the spider thing's guts. Malevolor spit out the dead creature. More hairy pieces fell from his lips as Malevolor spoke, using Scowlin's own throat, tongue, gritty teeth, and lips. Calm down, I'll dilute the venom so it does not harm you, my host. Scowlin suspected that putrid taste would never leave him, as it imprinted itself on the most primitive regions of his mind. The other spider things backed up a step. Perhaps they were not used to being eaten by humans foolish enough to race through this forest at night. The headless, furry, flying thing swooped down and snatched up a few of the spiders for them. Malevolor crushed and discarded the others. Do I get my body back now? Scowlin tried to say, but he had no command over his mouth. Malevolor answered with Scowlin's mouth. We are not to the most dangerous things these woods have to offer yet. As if summoned, Something spotted and enormous raced along the path to the side. Its body tore low limbs from the trunks. It blocked out the view of much of the forest in that direction. The gigantic thing crossed the trail in front of them, but then raced them along the other side. The undead driver held the reins and snapped the horses onward without reaction to this new threat. The purple magic swirled around their dark legs that propelled the carriage onward through the night. Scowling couldn't tell his left from his right anymore with his head on backward. The swollen, transparent bulb of the giant eye in his back pulsed out of time with Scowlin's heart. Ropey veins climbed out of his flesh to anchor the giant eye in place. The god tick. Watch it, boy. Benevolar turned the head completely around 2 more times as he spied in every direction with Scowlin's eyes. Scowlin screamed inside his head, "Stop that, you're going to twist my head clean off." "Relax," his own voice answered. "I know what I'm doing." Scowlin's backward arms raised, and Benevolar spoke in a language Scowlin could not comprehend or remember once the words passed. Great power erupted from his fingers and laced up the side of the huge thing sliding alongside the trail. It gave a dull, rumbling roar and veered deeper into the forest away from them. It did not even seem particularly hurt or angry, just annoyed and dissuaded. "Now can you put my body back right and give me back to myself?" "We are not even halfway through our greatest test yet, child," Benevolar declared. Something boomed. The sound and vibration repeated. Benevolar bent over so that Scowlin's body perched on its hands and knees. Hold on, let me fix something here. Looks like I did have another typo. On its hands and knees with his twisted head upside down. Is that really necessary? Stop whining and let me focus." The roving purple eye extended like a massive boil from Scowlin's exposed back. It caught sight of a severed arm still clutching the missing driver's whip. "Oh, gross," Scowlin thought. Benevolar pried open the dead fingers and took the whip as he stood up straight again. Dark things with dozens of arms leapt from treetop to treetop above. Scowlin's body circled one way as the head turned the other. He no longer bothered to protest. He wasn't sure he wanted control of his body back after all this. "You'll be better than new and back in control when we meet your master on the other side of these cursed woods." The things above swung down toward the carriage. Benevolar still used magic, but cast it along the braid of the whip as he lashed the strange creatures. This went on for nearly an hour before they finally gave up. The horses started to slow more than once, but Benevolar cast more magic into them, and they ran faster in a veil of purple power that was barely brighter than pure blackness. Scowlin wondered if the animals would drop dead the moment this was all over. Benevolar did not answer either way as he watched the world from Scowlin's back in hues of purple. "Now?" Scowlin asked. Benevolar sighed and whispered, "You have no idea what still lies ahead before this night will be through." Something hooted from the deep woods. In the other direction, much closer, something that sounded inhuman, but also very much like laughter, raked out through the night. Benevolar and Scowlin's body stood ready for what was to come.